close your eyes, lean back and listen. This is the heart of the 13th century. You are inside a city fortress. Outside, thousands of soldiers are waiting, but their swords are sheathed. Their shields are gone. Their catapults are silent. They are simply waiting. And you know that this silence is worse than the most terrifying scream, because they are the Mongols who have decided to defeat their enemies not by the sword, but by cutting off their bread. They are the terrifying genius who turned hunger into a weapon to forge history's most powerful empire, the army of Genghis Khan. Today, we will discuss not only the battles fought during that period, but also the most horrifying secrets of war. If you are ready, we are stepping inside those walls. Hello, everyone. Today's topic is the ruthless strategies of a figure who is generally mentioned in historical sources only as a great conqueror, Genghis Khan. Let's ask the question in the title once more. What kind of mind uses hunger as a weapon? This is not mere barbarity, but a cold-bloodedness steeped in military genius. Genghis Khan and his soldiers, the notorious Great Khan's Mongols, took siege tactics to the next level. They did not spend hours trying to breach walls like the Romans. They set a trap of silent horror, patiently woven over weeks, sometimes months. Just as they encircled the ancient city of Nishapur when they entered the Khwarezmian Empire in 1219. This was not a siege. It was a strangulation. They cut off all supply lines. They poisoned nearby wells. They formed an impenetrable perimeter, allowing no one to enter or escape. And do you know what the most chilling part is? This was not an emergency measure born of desperation. This was a deliberate plan. Mongol engineers were trained to calculate exactly when the city's provisions would run out and after how many days the resistance would collapse. Just as an engineer calculates the durability of a bridge, they mathematically determined the limits of human endurance. Once that critical hunger threshold was crossed, only despair remained. Some cities quietly opened their gates and surrendered without a sword even being drawn. But those who resisted faced history's most disgusting scenes. The accounts of the Persian historian Giovanni are stomach-churning. People first ate leather, then grass, and finally the corpses of the dead. Describing those terrible days in Merv, Giovanni says, "There was no one left to bury the dead, and dogs feasted on the flesh of pious men. After the gates were breached, they showed no mercy. Desperate people, reduced to skeletons by starvation, were either slaughtered or enslaved." Starvation by siege was not an instrument of victory. It was a psychological weapon in its own right. The message was simple. The end of resistance against us is a slow, humiliating, and helpless annihilation. Genghis Khan was called the Great Ruler, but the empire he established did not merely conquer lands. It tore entire societies apart. The dark spoils of war, the fate of captured women. Now let's look at the spoils of war, the fate of the captured women. When Bokhara was sacked in 1220, thousands of women and girls were taken prisoner. This was more than an act of plunder. It was human management on an industrial scale. Giovanni writes that after capturing the cities, the Mongols separated the men from the women and the children from their mothers, herding them into camps like flocks of sheep. This language was not a metaphor. They valued people as property. So how was this property distributed? Asterisk high rank. Noble women were reserved for Genghis Khan himself or his generals. Asterisk lower rank. Others were distributed to the soldiers sold in slave markets or faced a different fate. Women were paraded before the commanders, sorted according to their beauty, age, and social class. There is a bitter irony here. Beauty became a curse. Mongol commanders took pleasure in taking the wives and daughters of their defeated enemies. This was not just about acquiring concubines. It was a symbol of absolute dominance, of erasing the enemy's legacy. It was a deliberate act to humiliate and to wipe them from history. Some were forcibly incorporated into the Mongol tents, while others were sold in slave markets across the empire, from China to Central Asia. Their pasts were destroyed, they were renamed, and left to be forgotten. Genghis Khan's expansion was not just about grabbing territory. It was about consuming people, turning them into weapons in their wars. And the most vulnerable victims of this dark legacy were the captured women. The ultimate psychological weapon, the human shield line. Another terrifying strategy in Mongol tactics demonstrates how coldly calculated the Mongol war machine was: the human shield line. This was not a battlefield mistake. It was a systematic, deliberate policy. Captive civilians, mostly women, children, and the elderly, taken from newly conquered cities, were forced to walk in front of the Mongol troops. Their bodies had no value. They were a tool to be used and discarded. What was their purpose? Absorbing fire. They absorbed the first barrage of defensive arrows, preventing injury to Mongol soldiers. Crushing morale. Seeing their neighbors and relatives being killed by their own arrows brought the city's resistance morale to zero. What happened at the Siege of Gurganj was the culmination of this strategy. As the resistance stiffened, Genghis Khan ordered thousands of captives to be pushed forward as a buffer between the Mongol forces and the city walls. Giovanni again recounts, "They used the people of one city to destroy the next. Captives were lined up in front of catapults, forced to dig trenches, or tied together so they couldn't escape. If they survived the assault, they were often killed because they had lost their utility. This was not merely a military function. It was a terrifying message. Either you surrender, or your own people will be forced to die on your behalf." For the Mongols, war was governed not by mercy, but by results. And if thousands of innocent people were enough to break a fortress's resistance, that was an acceptable price. The Feast of Dominance. Execution under the banquet table. In 1223, after the Battle of Khalkha River, the Mongols crushed a coalition of Russian princes and Cuman leaders. The captured nobles did not face an ordinary death. The most brutal display of absolute dominance awaited them. Russian nobles like Mstislav of Kiev were killed neither by the sword nor by fire. In Mongol tradition, shedding noble blood was considered taboo. So, how did these geniuses solve this problem? According to Russian and Persian sources, they laid the captive nobles face down on the ground. Then, right on top of them, they built a large wooden platform. And upon this living coffin, the Mongol commanders held a grand victory feast. Imagine laughter, wine, and the sounds of a feast above, while below, the nobles slowly suffocated, crushed to death under the weight of the platform and the men on top. Perhaps their blood was not spilled, but the pain was indescribably immense. This was not revenge. It was a spectacle. By turning death into a grotesque feast, the Mongols declared their superiority not only through physical power, but also through their complete dominion over their enemies' memory, honor, and legacy. Their bodies were broken, their reputations shattered. The ultimate warning, dragged by the horse. Finally, let's look at the most brutal provision of Mongol law, the punishment for treason. This was the penalty enforced under the strict law code called the Yasa, established by Genghis Khan, for those who violated trust. This was no ordinary wartime execution. This was being tied to a horse and dragged until death. Who received this punishment? Traitors, spies, governors who surrendered the city and then resisted. In Mongol law, treason was a direct assault on the Khan's order. The punishment had to match. The condemned was tightly bound behind a horse. When the horse bolted, the victim was executed by being dragged across the rough terrain. This punishment was fast, public, and left a clear warning in its wake. A broken, fragmented body dragged in the dust before the city gates. The logic was clear: deterrence and absolute loyalty. Genghis Khan treated anyone who did not abide by his rules as a threat to the empire's stability. The Mongol Empire did not just invade. It shattered worlds and rewrote the rules of power. Genghis Khan's tactics were not excesses. They were strategies of dominion designed to break the enemy's will. The way the Mongols used punishment as a strategy enabled them to rise from nomadic tribesmen to the rulers of history's largest land empire. They created a system built on fear, discipline, and unforgiving justice. Their punishments were messages carved into human flesh, intended to echo for generations. Let us conclude with Giovanni's famous quote: "They came, they burned, they tore down, they killed, they plundered, and they left." Do you think the Mongols could have built such a rapid and vast empire without this systematic strategy of terror? I am curious about your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell. Next week, we will discuss Genghis Khan's torture and sexual practices. Would you like me to search for historical information on a specific one of these Mongol strategies, such as the use of human shields, to provide more detail?